Baptism of Fire, North Africa, 1943. The first thing you hear is the wind. It comes low across the desert, dragging sand against steel helmets and half-buried ration tins, hissing through the scrub like a living thing. Private First Class Daniel Mercer of the U.S. 1st Infantry Division squints into the glare outside Kasserine Pass, his M1 Garand hot against his palms. The sun hasn't even reached noon, and already sweat is cutting pale rivers through the dust on his face. Then the artillery begins. Not the scattered, nervous shelling he's grown used to. This is deliberate, measured, German. The first 88mm round screams overhead and detonates behind the American line, flipping a supply truck like a toy. Mercer flinches. Sergeant Tom Callahan, crouched beside him, swears under his breath. "Those aren't Italian guns," Callahan mutters. They both know what that means. Somewhere beyond the ridge, elements of the German Afrika Korps are moving, disciplined, synchronized, unseen. And at their center is a commander whose name has already begun circulating like a curse. Erwin Rommel. The Americans had expected a fight. They hadn't expected this. Across the valley, gray shapes rise through the mirage shimmer. Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks crest the ridge in a tight wedge formation. They don't charge wildly. They advance in bounds, one element moving while another covers. Machine gun tracers sweep low, pinning down the inexperienced U.S. troops. Mercer tries to steady his breathing. The German infantry doesn't shout. They don't break formation. They move with terrifying precision, squads covering each other as if rehearsed 1,000 times. Mortars land ahead of their own tanks, walking forward in coordination. Callahan grabs Mercer's collar. "They're fixing us in place," he shouts. "Armor's going to flank." And he's right. Within minutes, reports filter down the line. German units have slipped through weak points in the American defenses. Radios crackle with overlapping commands. Officers argue over conflicting maps. Entire companies begin pulling back without orders, unsure where the enemy actually is. The Germans know exactly where they are. That was the first lesson U.S. soldiers learned in North Africa. They weren't fighting a mob. They were fighting a professional army that had already conquered half of Europe. The Wehrmacht's junior officers, lieutenants and captains, operate with remarkable independence. When a flank opportunity appears, they exploit it without waiting for written approval. When an American machine gun nest stalls in advance, a German squad leader signals, and within seconds a coordinated assault team peels off to eliminate it. Mercer watches as a nearby American artillery crew struggles to resight their howitzer. Before they can fire, a single German 88mm round lands directly on position. First shot, direct hit. The 8.8 centimeters flak gun, originally designed for anti-aircraft defense, is being used as a long-range tank killer and field artillery piece. Its flat trajectory and lethal accuracy shock the Americans. Sherman tanks, when they arrive to counterattack, burn just as easily. Through binoculars, Lieutenant James Crawford sees the problem clearly. German fire isn't random. It's targeted, observed, adjusted. Someone is watching them. German forward observers, likely veterans of Poland and France, are calmly relaying coordinates while under fire. The Americans, by contrast, are still learning to coordinate infantry, armor, and artillery in real time. And the Germans exploit every hesitation. A platoon on Mercer's right begins to withdraw after spotting what they believe is a full battalion approaching. Later, they'll learn it was only a reinforced company using maneuver and dust clouds to exaggerate their numbers. Psychology, that's the second lesson. German forces don't just attack positions, they attack confidence. They strike fast, break cohesion, then press before units can regroup. Radios jam with confused requests for orders. Supply trucks clog narrow roads. Officers search desperately for reliable intelligence. Meanwhile, the German advance never appears rushed. Mercer sees something he won't forget. A wounded German soldier dragged back by two comrades under covering fire so precise it feels choreographed. No panic. No screaming. Just efficiency. "They're not scared," Mercer whispers. Callahan shakes his head. "They are. They just hide it better." As afternoon turns to chaos, American lines buckle. Tanks withdraw without infantry support. Infantry pull back without armor. Entire sections of the defense collapse not because every man breaks, but because coordination fails. The Germans capitalize immediately. Panzer units slice through exposed flanks. Motorized infantry follow close behind, consolidating gains before the Americans can counterattack. When U.S. troops attempt to regroup at secondary positions, German artillery is already pre-registered. The desert amplifies every explosion. The smell of burning oil and cordite hangs thick in the air. By nightfall, Mercer and what remains of his platoon are retreating through rocky terrain under sporadic machine gun fire. He doesn't know exactly where the enemy is anymore. That's the third lesson. The Germans are masters of initiative. They dictate tempo. They choose when and where to engage. And they exploit uncertainty ruthlessly. In North Africa, American soldiers are confronting an army hardened by campaigns in Poland, Norway, France, the Balkans, and the Soviet Union. Many German NCOs have been fighting continuously since 1939. They know how to read terrain. They know how to coordinate combined arms. They know how to sense weakness. And they can smell inexperience. As Mercer collapses behind a rocky outcrop that night, clutching his rifle, he understands something cold and sobering. This war won't be won with courage alone. The Germans fight differently, and the U.S. Army will have to learn fast or be broken. The rain falls differently in France. It doesn't hiss like the desert wind. It soaks. It clings. Turns earth into glue. Private First Class Daniel Mercer presses himself into the wet soil of a Norman hedgerow, heart pounding against his ribs as machine gun fire snaps inches overhead. The air smells of crushed leaves, wet wool, and cordite. Somewhere beyond the wall of tangled roots and thick brush, a German MG-42 chatters again. Its rate of fire so fast it sounds like canvas tearing in half. BRRRT. Men flatten instinctively. Sergeant Callahan crawls beside Mercer, water dripping from his helmet brim. "That's no damn machine gun," someone mutters. "That's a buzzsaw." They're not wrong. The MG-42, firing up to 1,200 rounds per minute, dominates the battlefield. It isn't just the volume of fire, it's the psychological weight of it. The sound alone freezes movement. Every American infantryman knows that crossing open ground under that weapon is almost suicide. And the Germans know it too. It's June 1944, weeks after D-Day. The beaches have been secured, but now the real fight has begun. Beyond the sand, in the suffocating maze of Normandy's bocage, the hedgerows are ancient, thick embankments topped with dense shrubs and trees, some taller than a house. They break fields into irregular compartments. Visibility is measured in yards. Tanks can't see over them. Radios struggle to maintain contact. Every field is a potential ambush. And the Germans have prepared. Opposing Mercer's division are elements of seasoned formations, battle-hardened survivors from the Eastern Front, including troops from divisions like Panzer Lehr Division. These are not green recruits. They are veterans who have fought at Kursk, Kharkov, and Smolensk. They understand defensive warfare intimately. Mercer peers through the foliage. He sees nothing. That's the problem. German doctrine emphasizes defense in depth. The first position may be lightly held, just enough to pin attackers. The real strength lies in concealed secondary positions, machine guns sighted to create intersecting fields of fire. Mortars are pre-sighted. Artillery coordinates are logged in advance. When Americans breach one hedgerow, they often run directly into a second line already zeroed in. Lieutenant Crawford signals forward. A Sherman tank lurches into the field behind them, its engine roaring. The crew can't see over the hedgerow, so they attempt to push through it. The moment the tank's nose breaks the brush, crack, a German 75mm anti-tank round punches through the Sherman's frontal armor. Flame bursts from the turret hatch. The tank burns where it stands. Mercer feels the concussion in his teeth. Hidden somewhere behind another hedgerow is a German PaK-40 anti-tank gun, perfectly camouflaged, firing from defilade. The crew likely repositioned after their last shot, trained to avoid counter-battery fire. They won't stay in one place long. The Americans are advancing blind. German small unit leadership again proves deadly. Squad leaders maneuver through communication trenches dug between hedgerows. They shift machine guns from one firing slit to another. When an American unit flanks a position, the Germans melt back, only to reappear at a different angle. Feels like fighting ghosts. Where are they? Mercer breathes. Every field is its own battlefield. Every advance costs blood. The Germans maximize terrain with ruthless efficiency. A single MG-42 team can dominate an entire approach. Snipers, often positioned in church towers or concealed attic windows, wait patiently for officers or radio operators to expose themselves. And then there are the counterattacks. At dusk, when exhausted American units dig in after taking a hedgerow, German forces frequently strike back with sudden, localized assaults. Not reckless charges, but sharp, coordinated thrusts supported by mortars. One evening, Mercer's platoon finally secures a small orchard after hours of crawling forward yard by yard. They barely have time to catch their breath when flares illuminate the sky. German voices shout from the darkness. Grenades arc over the hedgerow. A counterattack hits their thin perimeter with frightening speed. The Germans move low and fast, using MP-40 submachine guns and coordinated suppressive fire to punch into weak points. For a moment, it feels like the line will break entirely. But this time, something is different. American artillery answers, faster than before. Lessons from North Africa and Sicily have been learned. Forward observers now travel close with infantry units. Radio procedures have improved. Within minutes, 105mm shells begin crashing into suspected German assembly areas. The Germans still fight hard, still disciplined, still lethal. But the Americans are adapting. Engineers begin welding steel rhino cutters to the front of Sherman tanks, allowing them to punch through hedgerows without exposing their vulnerable underbellies. Infantry and armor begin coordinating more tightly. Fire teams learn to suppress likely MG nests before moving. It is costly learning. Mercer sees friends fall in fields that look peaceful from a distance. Green grass, apple trees, stone farmhouses. But every farmhouse may conceal a sniper. Every haystack could hide a machine gun team. The Germans make every yard expensive. And that is what makes fighting them so hard. Not just their weapons, not just their experience, but their refusal to collapse. Even when pushed back, even when outnumbered, they fight with methodical determination. There is no easy breakthrough. The war in Normandy becomes a grinding test of endurance, skill, and adaptation. The Germans leverage terrain and tactical doctrine to slow a far larger force. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the balance shifts. The Americans are no longer the inexperienced soldiers of Kasserine. They are learning how to fight a professional army. And the Germans, for the first time, are beginning to run out of space. The cold arrives without warning. It creeps into boots first, through wet socks and cracked leather, then climbs into bone. Private First Class Daniel Mercer stamps his feet in the snow outside a foxhole near the Belgian village of Krinkelt. His breath fogs thick in the pre-dawn dark. The trees stand skeletal and silent, their branches heavy with frost. The war has felt brutal before, but never like this. It's December 16, 1944. The Americans believe the Germans are finished, retreating, broken, short on fuel and men. Intelligence reports describe them as exhausted. Reinforcements are being shifted elsewhere. Then the forest explodes. German artillery crashes down in a sudden, overwhelming barrage. Not scattered shells, thousands. Tree bursts shower the forest with razor-sharp splinters. The concussion slams Mercer flat against the frozen earth. Incoming! Someone screams, but the word is swallowed by detonations. For nearly 2 hours, the bombardment doesn't stop. This isn't a desperate last stand. It's an offensive. Through the smoke and shattered timber, German infantry emerge in white camouflage smocks, moving in disciplined assault formations. Behind them, the low rumble of engines grows louder. Panzers, elements of powerful armored formations, including units from the feared 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, are driving straight through what was believed to be a quiet sector. Mercer peers over the lip of his foxhole. Snow churns under advancing boots. German soldiers move fast, exploiting surprise. They bypass strong points, slipping through gaps in thin American lines. Instead of attacking every position head-on, they isolate them. It's the same lesson from North Africa initiative. But now it's magnified by weather. Fog blankets the Ardennes forest. American air superiority, the crushing advantage that had dominated Normandy, vanishes overnight. Grounded by cloud cover, fighter bombers can't intervene. The Germans have chosen their moment carefully. A Sherman tank rumbles into position behind Mercer's line. His commander scans nervously through binoculars. Then, through drifting snow, a darker shape appears. Tiger Eye. The massive German heavy tank moves with deliberate confidence, its thick frontal armor nearly impervious to standard Sherman rounds at range. The 88mm gun protrudes like a spear. Crack. The Sherman erupts in flame before it can adjust its aim. The psychological effect is immediate. Word spreads quickly. Tigers in the woods. Whether there are 2 or 20 hardly matters. Fear multiplies their presence. German armored doctrine emphasizes shock. Concentrated thrusts at weak sectors. Breakthrough, then rapid exploitation. American units, thinly spread and often inexperienced replacements, struggle to grasp the scale of the attack. Roads clog with retreating vehicles and refugees. Fuel dumps explode to prevent capture. Entire regiments are cut off. Mercer's company receives orders to hold position at all costs. The Germans probe relentlessly. Small assault groups infiltrate between companies at night, cutting phone lines, attacking supply points. They use captured American uniforms in some sectors to create confusion. Roadblocks appear behind what were once secure lines. It feels like encirclement. At dawn on the second day, German loudspeakers broadcast in English. American soldiers, you are surrounded. Surrender and live. No one answers. The cold becomes another enemy. Rifles jam unless constantly cleaned. Frostbite claims fingers and toes. Wounded men freeze before medics can reach them. Yet the Germans suffer too. Their offensive depends on speed and fuel. Mercer doesn't know it, but German columns are gambling on capturing Allied fuel depots. Their logistics are fragile. Every stalled vehicle becomes a bottleneck in narrow forest roads. Still, on the ground, none of that is visible. All Mercer sees are disciplined counterattacks. When an American unit retakes a crossroads, German forces often respond within hours, probing for another seam. Their coordination between infantry and armor remains sharp. Mortars fall with unsettling accuracy. But something has changed since Kasserine. When German infantry assault Mercer's position on the third day, American artillery responds almost instantly. Pre-registered defensive fires slam into tree lines. Machine guns are sighted for interlocking coverage. Bazooka teams wait until tanks expose weaker side armor. The Americans bend, but they do not break. In the town of Bastogne, surrounded U.S. forces refuse surrender. Across the Ardennes, isolated units hold crossroads long enough to disrupt German timetables. And time is everything. As the weather clears, the sky changes color. Blue. The first American fighter bombers appear, engines roaring overhead. They dive onto exposed German columns, rockets streaking into convoys trapped on icy roads. The initiative begins to slip. German units that advanced boldly days earlier now find themselves low on fuel, low on ammunition, and under constant air attack. Their early success cannot be sustained. Mercer watches a burning German half-track smolder at the forest edge. Snow falls gently over twisted steel. The Germans had launched one of the most ambitious counteroffensives of the war, bold, coordinated, tactically sharp, and for a moment terrifyingly effective. But even elite units cannot overcome shrinking resources forever. As January grinds on, the bulge in the Allied lines slowly flattens. Mercer has learned something else about fighting the Germans. They are most dangerous when they choose the battlefield. But if you survive the initial blow, if you hold, momentum can turn. Still, as the war pushes toward Germany itself, one final test awaits. Because fighting Germans inside Germany is different. The Rhine looks peaceful at dawn. Mist rolls low across the water, pale and quiet, as if the river has forgotten the war entirely. Private First Class Daniel Mercer crouches inside a Higgins boat modified for river crossing, knuckles white around his M1 Garand. The opposite bank, Germany, rises in dark silhouette. Home soil for the enemy. That changes things. 30 seconds. A lieutenant shouts over the engine noise. Mercer swallows. He has fought Germans in deserts, orchards, and frozen forests. But now they are fighting in their own towns, on their own streets, defending what remains of the Reich. And desperate men are dangerous. The ramp slams down. Machine gun fire rakes the waterline instantly. German defenders, Volksgrenadiers, remnants of shattered divisions, teenage boys in oversized uniforms. Fire from concrete bunkers and shattered buildings. The crack of Mauser rifles echoes sharply between stone walls. But woven among them are veterans. Hardened NCOs who survived Poland, France, Russia. They anchor the defense. Mercer scrambles forward as engineers throw smoke. A German MG-42 opens from a second-story window, stitching rounds across the shoreline. The rate of fire is unmistakable, violent, mechanical, relentless. An American flamethrower team moves up under covering fire. A jet of fire roars into the window. The gun falls silent. Inside Germany, every town is a fortress. German doctrine shifts from maneuver to attrition. No more sweeping offensives. No more grand flanking moves. Now it is choke points, barricades, and kill zones. Streets are blocked with rubble and overturned trams. Panzerfaust teams, often boys barely 16, wait in alleyways for American tanks to pass. The disposable anti-tank launcher is simple, cheap, and deadly at close range. A Sherman rounds a corner. Flash. The Panzerfaust warhead slams into its side armor. The tank erupts in smoke and flame, crew scrambling out under rifle fire. Urban combat erases advantages. American artillery is powerful, but in cities, visibility is limited. Air support exists, but buildings provide cover. Every doorway hides uncertainty. Mercer moves building to building with his squad. Clear a room. Move up a stairwell. Kick in another door. German defenders use mouse holes, blown openings between adjacent buildings, allowing them to shift positions without exposing themselves to the street. Snipers linger in church spires and factory chimneys. Booby traps wait beneath floorboards. The fighting becomes intimate. A German soldier bursts from a cellar doorway 10 feet away. Mercer fires reflexively. The man falls hard against the cobblestones, helmet rolling free. For a moment, there is silence. Then more gunfire. There is no collapsing front. No mass surrender. Even as Allied forces close from east and west, German resistance often stiffens. Propaganda has promised annihilation if they lose. Some units fight to buy time for civilians to flee. Others fight out of ideology. Others simply because retreat is impossible. In one industrial town, Mercer's company encounters coordinated resistance from elements of the 9th Parachute Division, paratroopers retrained as ground infantry. They are understrength, undersupplied, but tactically sharp. Machine guns are sighted to dominate long factory corridors. Mortars are fired from concealed courtyards. Even now, outnumbered and strategically doomed, the German defense remains methodical. What makes it so hard is not just equipment. It is discipline under collapse. German small unit cohesion persists even as higher command structures crumble. When officers fall, sergeants take over. When ammunition runs low, they conserve. When flanked, they counterattack locally to regain lost ground. Mercer notices something else. They know this terrain instinctively. They move through backyards, cellars, sewer tunnels. They understand sight lines from second-story windows. They use rubble as natural fortification. Every destroyed building becomes a defensive asset. The Americans must relearn combat yet again. This time in tight streets where every shadow moves. Casualties mount block by block. But the weight of the Allies is overwhelming now. American logistics, fuel, ammunition, replacements, flow steadily. Artillery pounds strong points relentlessly. Tanks fire point-blank into buildings. Engineers demolish entire structures to eliminate resistance. The Germans fight hard, but they are shrinking. One evening, as Mercer's unit secures a battered town square, white flags begin appearing from shattered windows. A handful of exhausted German soldiers step forward, hands raised. Not all. Gunfire still cracks from a distant warehouse. The war does not end cleanly. Weeks later, deeper inside Germany, rumors spread, Berlin encircled, leaders missing, units surrendering en masse. Then finally confirmation. Germany has capitulated. Mercer sits on the steps of a ruined courthouse, helmet beside him. The air smells of dust and smoke and something else. Finality. He thinks back. North Africa, the shock of professionalism. Normandy, the suffocating hedgerows. The Ardennes, the frozen counterpunch. Germany itself, the bitter, disciplined defense of home soil. What made fighting the Germans so hard? They were trained, experienced, tactically flexible. Their junior leaders were empowered. Their weapons, MG-42s, 88s, Panthers, Tigers, were lethal and used well. They exploited terrain ruthlessly. They struck fast when they sensed weakness. And even when losing, they did not quit easily. But neither did the Americans. In the end, it wasn't one battle or one advantage that decided it. It was adaptation, industrial strength, coordination, air power, logistics, endurance. Mercer rises slowly, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. The hardest fights are often against opponents who are capable, disciplined, and determined. And surviving them changes you forever.